Hey there, my name is Naomi and I'm going to show you how to make these loaves of sourdough bread using well-fed starter or Levain. Let's get started. The Levain has been sitting, it's nice and bubbly. We're ready to make bread, so let's get started. First thing you'll need is a scale and a large bowl, a thermometer to measure your temperature of water. This is 670 grams of 80 to 85 Fahrenheit water. You'll need 255 grams of Levain, 90 grams of whole wheat flour, 800 grams of all-purpose flour, and also 20 grams of salt. You will add that later though. Set your bowl on the scale and tare it so it says 0. Mine will say 1, that's fine. You'll need 670 grams of water. We'll add that. Next up, we'll tare it again. Now we're going to add our Levain. It might float, it might not, but as long as it's happy and bubbly, that's okay. We have our 255 grams of Levain. We're going to add 90 grams of whole wheat flour, and then 800 grams of all-purpose flour. We have our 800 grams of flour added, and now we're going to take it off the scale, and we're going to start mixing it with your hands, nice and gentle. Do this until it's all well hydrated. Now what we have is well hydrated flours, no real clumps anywhere, no flour down on the bottom anywhere either. After you clean up your hands, try not to get that into your sink drain, anything like that. You won't want that in your pipes. Now you set your timer for 20 minutes. All right, it's been 20 minutes. It's sat uncovered. It's tared to 0 for my scale, and I'm going to add my 20 grams of salt. I'm going to take my hands and I'm just going to blend this salt in for 3 minutes to 5 minutes or so until you don't really feel the little grains of salt anymore. You'll notice that the texture really changes during this time. What I'm doing is I'm really just exercising all that gluten and getting it all worked in there, exercising it so we end up with some really nice proofing bread at the end. So it's been a few minutes now. You can tell that the consistency has really changed. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to get spray oil and I'm going to pull this to the side and spray the side of my bowl. Turn it. This is what's gonna keep it from getting stuck to the bowl as it rises and as it proofs. It's been 30 minutes. Wet hands, stretch and fold. Set your timer for another 30 minutes. Set it uncovered. Wet hands again. Stretch and fold. Last time. And now we're going to cover it and put it in a warm spot for 2 hours or an hour and a half. Now on a floured surface, you just scrape out your sourdough loaves and just get as much as you can out of the bowl. What we're gonna do is spread it out a little bit, and as best as you can, try to split it in half about evenly. And then we're going to separate the loaves, and we're just going to set our timer for 20 minutes and let them sit on the counter just like this, just to let it rest a little bit so we can have it a little bit more pliable when it's time to spread it out. Now that our 20-minute rest is up on a slightly floured surface, spread it out as much as you can into a rectangular or into a square shape, and we're just going to fold it into thirds. We want to keep some of the bubbles, but kind of remove them at the same time as we roll it and as we put tension in it, and you'll see that in just a second. So we're going to turn it the opposite direction, again, just a little bit of flour, and we're going to roll it on top of itself. Then we're going to turn it a quarter turn and we're just going to pull it towards us just to create a tension on the outside of the dough. Look at you making bread and it's not even 2020. Now that the dough has set overnight, we've preheated our Dutch ovens in our oven to 475. If you take about 1/3 of a cup of white rice and sprinkle it into the bottom of your Dutch oven that's hot, that's going to act as a barrier so your dough doesn't burn. Now we're going to take parchment paper and just kind of flip our dough out onto it, and that's going to keep it as a barrier again so it doesn't bake into the rice. And we have something that is a non-stick surface that the bread doesn't stick to. Next, take a sharp paring knife or a lame and slice your bread open just enough to get an oven spring that goes in the right direction. Now we're going to cover it up and we're going to put it into our 475-degree oven for 27 minutes. At the 27-minute mark, take your lids off and then place them back into the oven for an additional about 20 minutes until your internal temperature reaches 208 to 210 degrees. Now you want to remove it from your baking dish and set it on a cooling rack for at least 3 hours or until it is completely cooled before cutting into it. I have been known to slice into one a little earlier. Look at that loaf. Perfect.
And they want us one to make a dozen.